председатель.
Thank you, Mr. President. What the Security Council just heard from the so-called prosecutor of the so-called International Criminal Court was not a report. The briefings by the officials of this politicized entity to the Council have long ago become a show in the theater of the absurd. This body, which is an obedient tool of the West, has two modes in which it operates. The first one is when it quickly slaps together cases against unwanted person from out-of-favor countries, and the second mode is when it's imitating work accompanied by explanations why it's not yielding results. At present, the ICC, when it comes to the Sudan file, is in mode number 2. As a result, the Council has to, once every 6 months, listen to wordplay and listen to explanations about who is to blame for the fact that nothing is happening. In this context, we could not overlook the fact that Mr. Khan, in his report, characterized the only trial against Kushaiba. He characterizes as the most effective in the history of the court. Let me recall here that the case was initiated 17 years after this situation was referred to the ICC. So here, the obvious comparison is to say that the court is known by the most effective trial. The mass war crimes committed by NATO in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya is something that ICC saw nothing objectionable in. And against this background, even one person accused, charged in Darfur is indeed an impressive rate of success. This present report on Darfur is just as empty as the previous ones were, and we must acknowledge honestly, finally, that ICC is not able and is not particularly willing to implement the mandate it has under Resolution 1593. And the moment the electoral violence story in Darfur was no longer of interest to its Western masters, the ICC moved to the mode of sluggishly imitating work, and it has been doing this for 2 decades now. At the same time, the ICC has chosen the simplest way of explaining its lack of effectiveness. It is to accuse the national authorities of its own failures. Indeed, why wouldn't you, if you have a budget of $100 million, wouldn't you report and say that the ICC is powerless because Sudan is not cooperating? But it's very difficult to reproach Sudan, given what the ICC has become since 2005, and that is the date when the Darfur file was referred to it by the Security Council, and given the consequences of its activity, the court's activity inter alia for this country. The situation in Sudan illustrates very well the false Western premise according to which no peace without peace there is no justice. And here we're talking about the ICC-style justice, of course. The situations in Darfur and Libya referred by the Security Council are similar. Within those, the ICC at different speed, but did implement its main and the only function, being a battering ram for the statehood of those developing countries which are out of favor. The ICC is a direct co-participant in Western crimes. It's equally enthusiastic in creating cases against those who are appointed to be bad guys. It closes its eyes to the atrocities committed by the very bad guys, but the ones who are loyal to the West. And of course, it sweeps under the carpet the numerous crimes committed by its masters. ICC justice has become a synonym for impunity for the architectors and those who stand to benefit of the chaos which consumes all after the collapse of a state. The high price in blood paid for the color of revolutions organized by Western countries is always in the hundreds of thousands of lives lost and broken on the part of civilians. And the blood of these victims is also inter alia on the conscience of the ICC officials. Currently, for example, in Sudan, once again, we're witnessing a conflict, and the level of suffering of the civilians is obviously higher than during the electoral violence in 2005, and the ICC is in a wait-and-see position. Why is that? It is because its Western patrons have not yet decided who they're going to support in the conflict ongoing in this country. But the moment we can see Mr. Khan becoming active in Sudan, that would mean that the priorities have become clear. So we need to consider the following here. Did it make sense to spend millions by ICC on Darfur? Maybe it would have made more sense to more effectively help Sudan in creating state institutions. Maybe justice should be in the hands of the people of the country and not the forces which are across the ocean. Practice has shown that if this were the case, the process is more effective and is certainly is not accompanied by the collapse of statehood. The main question that we need to be considering here is why and who needs the ICC. And this is the kind of question that arises not only in the context of Sudan. The court was planned as a comprehensive international body of justice, but from the very beginning, something went wrong when it came to the practically implementing this ideal. Western countries immediately started using the court as an instrument for imposing their will under the infamous rules-based order. Initially, they proceeded carefully, making sure they do not frighten their potential allies. And the ICC in its first years were pointedly limiting itself with investigations against non-state actors. But the moment the West saw that a sufficient number of countries were in the bondage to the Rome Statute, the ICC moved on to a more decisive work on its direct remit. It became an instrument of fighting those who crossed the hegemon and its satellites. And the focus immediately shifted and moved on to state leaders up to and including the acting heads of African countries. It's notable here that the absolute majority of the cases in the docket of the ICC is about Africa, despite the fact that the most mass and bloody atrocities in modern history were committed by Western countries who steamrolled over not just countries, but whole regions with their aggression. Throughout its existence, the ICC filed charges against 52 people. Out of them, 47 are Africans. Western nationals are not in that list at all. So we have an obvious conclusion here. The ICC is just an instrument of punishing those who displease the West. And we must honestly acknowledge here that the ambitious project of a genuinely universal, impartial international court failed. And we suggest that those states that really want to restore justice, to punish crimes, to have national reconciliation, that they should consider strengthening their national justice systems and stop participating in this politicized entity which has nothing to do with justice. I thank you.